Imagine walking through the grocery store, pushing your cart past aisle after aisle of products, all screaming for your attention. Bright packaging, bold promises, words like heart healthy and whole grain jumping off the labels. You stop in the bread section. You're trying to do the right thing. Your doctor told you to watch your carbs, to think about your blood sugar. So you reach for the brownest loaf you can find. It looks healthy. It feels responsible. It even has the word whole wheat printed right across the front in big, friendly letters. But here's the truth that might stop you cold. That bread you just picked up, the one that makes you feel like you're making a smart choice, is setting off a metabolic time bomb inside your body. For anyone over 60, it can be just as damaging as eating white bread. In some cases, even worse. We're going to uncover exactly why that happens. And more importantly, we're going to arm you with the knowledge to never make that mistake again. By the time we're done, you'll know the 5 breads that actually stabilize your blood sugar and protect your health, plus the 3 so-called healthy breads that are quietly pushing millions toward diabetes, weight gain, and dangerous inflammation. And the number 1 best bread? It's probably not even on your radar. It's not flashy, it's not heavily marketed. But the science behind it is so powerful, it can change everything you thought you knew about diet and aging. Let me ask you something personal. How many slices of bread do you eat in a typical day? And what kind is it? White? Whole wheat? Sourdough? Something else? Think about that for a moment. Now, consider this. Research from Johns Hopkins University, published in 2019, showed that adults over 65 have approximately 35% reduced insulin sensitivity compared to adults in their 40s. That means your pancreas has to work significantly harder just to clear the same amount of glucose from your bloodstream. The bread choices you make at breakfast, lunch, and dinner aren't just minor decisions. They're directly impacting how hard your body has to fight to stay healthy. What if I told you that the grain structure of your bread matters more than whether it's labeled whole wheat? What if fermentation, temperature, and even the way the flour is milled affect your insulin more than the type of grain itself? Stay with me, because each bread we reveal builds on the science of the one before it, and the worst offenders at the end will genuinely shock you. We'll start with number 5, a dense, dark, old-world bread that most people walk right past without even a second glance. But your aging body desperately needs what it delivers: real pumpernickel. Not the soft, colored imposters found in plastic bags that are really just dyed wheat bread, but authentic European-style pumpernickel, made from coarsely ground whole rye. Here's what makes it so special. The long, slow baking process, sometimes up to 24 hours at low temperatures, transforms the grain into a powerhouse of resistant starch, a type of carbohydrate that resists digestion in the small intestine and feeds your gut microbiome instead of flooding your bloodstream with sugar. The glycemic index of traditional pumpernickel typically sits between 41 and 46, compared to white bread at 75 or higher. One of my patients, a retired engineer in his mid-60s, thought his morning toast was completely harmless. He had been eating whole wheat bread for years because he believed it was the healthier option. But his fasting glucose was stuck at 118, and no amount of medication seemed to budge it. We switched him to Authentic Pumpernickel, 2 slices every morning, and within just 7 weeks, his fasting glucose dropped to 101. He told me he felt fuller longer and stopped needing his mid-morning snack entirely. When shopping, Look for dense, dark loaves with visible rye kernels. It should feel heavy, almost like a brick. Check the ingredient list. Rye meal or rye berries must be the first ingredient. Anything else, especially wheat flour, caramel coloring, or molasses in the top 3 ingredients, is fake pumpernickel, designed to look dark but deliver none of the benefits. Now, number 4 takes blood sugar control even further by introducing a biological process that actually changes the composition of the bread before it ever reaches your plate. Authentic sourdough, made with wild yeast and long fermentation. But not the soft, mass-produced sourdough you find on supermarket shelves. The real stuff, fermented for 12 to 18 hours using a live starter culture. During that extended fermentation, lactobacillus bacteria pre-digest the starches and gluten in the flour, lowering the glycemic index and reducing the rapidly digestible starches that cause glucose spikes. In a landmark study from the University of Guelph, participants with impaired glucose tolerance who ate sourdough reduced post-meal blood sugar spikes by 27% and insulin demand by 21%. After 60, this matters even more because your digestive enzyme production naturally slows down. Research from the University of Bologna confirmed that older adults produce significantly less amylase, the enzyme that breaks down starch, making unfermented bread harder to process. Sourdough essentially does some of that work for you through bacterial fermentation. One patient, a former librarian in her late 60s with an A1C of 6.3, switched from her usual multigrain bread to true sourdough from a local bakery. Within 3 months, her A1C dropped to 5.9. She told me her afternoon energy crashes disappeared completely, and she could finally get through the day without reaching for a sugary snack to keep her going. To get the real benefits, buy from a bakery that lists fermentation time, ideally 14 hours or longer. The ingredient list should be beautifully simple: flour, water, salt, and starter. If it includes commercial yeast or the words sourdough flavor, skip it entirely, because you won't get the metabolic advantages. We're now entering the top 3, where the science gets truly remarkable. Number 3 combines protein, fiber, and blood sugar stabilizing fats like almost no other bread. Flaxseed bread. Specifically, bread where ground flaxseed makes up at least 25% of the total ingredients. Flaxseed is extraordinarily high in soluble fiber, lignans, and plant-based omega-3s, and it triggers what's called the second meal effect, improving your blood sugar response hours later at your next meal. A study from the University of Copenhagen enrolled adults with metabolic syndrome and had them consume flaxseed-enriched bread at breakfast for 12 weeks. The results showed a 23% improvement in post-meal glucose response and a 17% reduction in fasting insulin levels. For older adults, fiber intake typically plummets. Data shows adults over 65 consume an average of only 13 grams of fiber per day, far below the recommended 25 to 30 grams. 2 slices of quality flaxseed bread can provide 8 to 10 grams of fiber, nearly doubling your daily intake right there. One patient, a 73-year-old woman with prediabetes and chronic constipation, started eating flaxseed bread for her daily sandwich. Not only did her blood sugar improve, dropping from an average fasting glucose of 122 to 107 within 2 months, but her digestive issues resolved almost completely. She said it was the easiest health change she'd ever made. When choosing flaxseed bread, look for ground flaxseed listed in the first 3 ingredients, at least 4 grams of fiber per slice, and minimal added sugars. Some brands add honey or cane sugar to balance the flavor. Avoid those. The best versions taste slightly nutty and dense, not sweet. Now, number 2 is a bread type that's been eaten for over 10,000 years, but is only now being validated by modern metabolic science. 100% sprouted grain bread. Here's the magic. When grains sprout, enzymes are activated that break down starches into simpler compounds, reduce overall carbohydrate density, and increase the bioavailability of vitamins and minerals like magnesium and chromium, both of which are absolutely critical for insulin function. A study from Penn State University found that sprouted wheat bread had a 34% lower glycemic index than unsprouted whole wheat bread, and a 41% higher level of bioavailable magnesium. After the age of 60, magnesium deficiency becomes epidemic. Research shows nearly 55% of adults over 65 are magnesium deficient, and magnesium is required for over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body, including every step of insulin signaling. Sprouted grain bread gives you a carbohydrate source that actually helps your body handle carbohydrates better. A patient in his 70s with type 2 diabetes had been eating whole wheat bread for 20 years, thinking he was doing the right thing. His A1C was stuck at 7.4 despite medication. We switched him to 100% sprouted grain bread, monitored his portions carefully, and within 4 months his A1C dropped to 6.7. His doctor was able to reduce one of his medications. He said the biggest difference was he no longer felt sluggish after lunch. Look for bread where sprouted whole grains are the only grain ingredients listed. Avoid anything that says enriched flour or wheat flour in addition to sprouted grains. That means it's been cut with regular flour. The best brands are often found in the freezer section because they contain no preservatives. And here we are at number 1. Lean in, because this is the single most misunderstood bread choice in modern nutrition. The absolute best bread for blood sugar control after 60 is authentic German-style whole kernel rye bread, sometimes called Kernbrot or Vollkornbrot. This is so dense you could practically use it as a doorstop, and that density is exactly why it works. The rye kernels are left whole or only cracked, which means your digestive system has to work significantly harder to break them down. This creates an extended, gradual release of glucose into your bloodstream, instead of the rapid spike you get from flour-based breads, even whole grain ones. A groundbreaking study from Lund University in Sweden compared whole kernel rye bread to whole wheat bread in adults aged 60 to 78. The whole kernel rye group experienced a 39% lower glucose spike after meals, a 31% lower insulin response, and reported significantly greater satiety, meaning they felt full longer and ate less at subsequent meals. Here's what almost no one understands. When grain is milled into flour, even whole grain flour, the surface area increases exponentially, which allows your digestive enzymes to attack it all at once. The result is a flood of glucose. But when the kernel stays intact, digestion happens slowly, particle by particle, which means glucose enters your bloodstream in a slow, controlled stream instead of a tidal wave. After 60, this distinction becomes absolutely critical. Research from Stanford University found that older adults experience what's called glycemic variability, meaning their blood sugar swings more dramatically between highs and lows compared to younger adults. These swings are independently associated with increased cardiovascular risk and cognitive decline. Whole kernel rye bread eliminates those swings. A patient in her mid-70s with a 15-year history of type 2 diabetes, an A1C of 7.8, and frequent hypoglycemic episodes from her medication introduced whole kernel rye bread as her primary bread choice. Within 5 months, her A1C was down to 6.9 with 0 hypoglycemic events. She told me she'd never felt more stable or more in control of her diabetes in over a decade. When shopping, look for imported German rye bread, often sold in vacuum-sealed packages. The ingredient list should show whole rye kernels or rye berries as the primary ingredient. It will be extremely dense, sometimes almost black, and it should have at least 5 grams of fiber per slice. This is not sandwich bread. You eat it in thinner slices, often with toppings, Scandinavian style. Now, let's confront the 3 absolute worst breads for blood sugar after 60. The third worst is anything labeled multigrain or 12-grain bread. These sound healthy, and that's exactly the problem. Multigrain simply means multiple grains were used, but it says nothing about whether those grains are whole or refined. Most multigrain breads are made primarily from refined white or wheat flour, with tiny amounts of other grains added for marketing. An analysis tested popular multigrain breads and found that 81% of them had glycemic indexes above 70, nearly identical to white bread. The second worst is standard whole wheat bread. Modern whole wheat bread is made from finely milled whole wheat flour that digests almost as quickly as white flour. A landmark study from Harvard found that the glycemic index of most commercial whole wheat bread ranges from 69 to 74, barely better than white bread at 75. The problem is the milling process. Even though the bran and germ are included, once that grain is pulverized into fine flour, your body treats it like pure starch. And the absolute worst? Any bread with added sugar or high fructose corn syrup in the first 5 ingredients. Most commercial sandwich breads contain 2 to 4 grams of added sugar per slice. A sandwich uses 2 slices. And if you're eating bread at multiple meals, you could be consuming 10 to 15 grams of added sugar daily just from bread. This bread is designed to be soft, sweet, and shelf-stable, not to support your metabolic health. Let's bring it all together. Number 5. Authentic Pumpernickel for its low glycemic index and resistant starch. Number 4. Real Sourdough for fermentation and reduced starch availability. Number 3. Flaxseed Bread for fiber, omega-3s, and the second meal effect. Number 2. 100% sprouted grain bread for nutrient bioavailability. And number 1. Whole kernel rye bread for its intact grain structure and unmatched blood sugar stability. Avoid multigrain traps, standard whole wheat, and anything with added sugars hiding in the ingredient list. You do not have to give up bread to control your blood sugar after 60. You simply have to choose better bread. These are not exotic foods. They're available, affordable, and they work with your biology, not against it. Your body is not broken. It's simply responding to the information you've been given. Now that you have better information, you have the power to make choices that work with your biology, not against it. Make this the first day of your new relationship with bread, your blood sugar, your energy, and your future self will thank you.